After working with over 100 long-form YouTube clients, 30 of whom had over 1 million subscribers, I finally figured out what it takes to get clients. And while most editors struggle to even find consistent work, this video will help you find those clients and scale your editing career. I want you to imagine you have a funnel, the ones that you pour water down. At the top, it's super wide, and towards the bottom, there's a tiny bit that trickles out. Now, the wider the bottom of this funnel is, the more water leaks through, and your editing business works in the exact same way. If we want to get you more clients, it's obvious we want to make this funnel as wide as possible. But how do you actually do that? Well, you want to minimize friction at each stage of this funnel. That means make it as easy as possible to, first of all, find out about you. Make it as easy as possible for them to find your work, and then make it as easy as possible for them to DM you, and at each stage of the DMs, make it as easy as possible for them to reply until they actually pay you. And for you to understand what I mean by making it as easy as possible for people to respond to you, I've created a full case study where I show you how I closed a $1,900 per video client all within DMs. If you go into the description now, you'll be able to get that $1,900 case study, and it's completely free. You'll be able to see the exact DMs that I send. But how do you even become the type of editor that these clients want to respond to? Well, that's where the second tip comes in, which is stop focusing on qualifications. Instead, focus on proof. There was a time I was scrolling on Twitter on my phone. It's about 3 years ago. And because I'm constantly engaging with editing tweets in the editing space, Twitter basically just always serves me editor posts. And there was one day I came across this girl who recently just graduated, and she was quote retweeting a 15-year-old editor's showreel. She said she had been studying editing in university for 4 years. She spent over $40,000 for her degree, and this 15-year-old was better at editing than her. And this tweet had blown up, and basically the entire editing community was saying, not in a disrespectful way, but you basically don't get anything from going down the formal editing route. And you can even search it up for yourself, like how much does an editor make per year when they've actually qualified? Usually it's anywhere from like 15 to 30, 40,000 a year. It's kind of sad when you get a dumbass 20-year-old like me making more than them. Now, this isn't me calling them stupid, and I don't think you should either. Like, what I am saying is don't fall for the myth that a random piece of paper saying that you know how to edit means that you'll actually have skills that the market values. Because if you are a client, who would you rather hire? Someone who has a piece of paper saying they can edit, or someone that can actually show proof that they can edit and they've done it for other clients? And if you are at the stage where you haven't had a ton of clients and a ton of social proof, that's fine. Just focus on showing your work, because that's what helps you get more clients. But once you do start getting that work, how do you make sure your income stays consistent rather than randomly falling off a cliff because you got dropped by a client? Well, that's where you want to make sure you're not starting from scratch with every single video. Here's how most editors operate. They get a random client project from some random DM that they have no idea how it converted. It was a random referral, and they put in all the work to finish that video. They download the footage, they ingest all of it into the timeline, they do the cut, the effects, the sound effects, they export it, all that good stuff. And by the end of it, they get paid, and then they have to go over the entire process again where they're just waiting for some random client to bless them. Instead, what the best editors do, the ones that get consistent client work, is they use that work to get more work. They have a positive feedback cycle. The first way to do this is use that client work to attract new clients. This means posting it and also making sure you update your portfolio with great work. The second way to keep that income consistent is just be a fun person to work with. Have communications on time, have your deadlines be met, and that'll mean people want to give you recurring work rather than being those editors that no one actually wants to work with long term because they're late and they can't communicate. But even if you are doing everything right, you're still going to fall off after a few months or a few years if you don't follow this next rule, and that is to be a perfectionist. Now, this is going to be a little bit controversial, but if you're like me, then you're going to understand it completely. About 3 years ago, I'm in a Discord call with my friend. He's an editor as well, and I'm screen sharing my work. He's watching me edit, and out of nowhere, in the middle of the silence, because we've been on Discord for hours, he just says, "Why do you keep watching this one scene 20, 30, 40 times? There's no way you're getting paid enough for that." And in that moment, I think, okay, I'm getting paid like $300 for this video. Objectively, I'm not getting paid enough for how much effort I'm putting in. But I just told him, like, because I just don't want to hand it in if it's not perfect. And what's interesting is, and no shade to that editor, I've gotten a lot further in my career than I have than him. And I genuinely put so much of that into the fact that I have this trait of perfectionism. So if you feel as though, oh, I'm a perfectionist, that's completely fine. In fact, that one trait is a lot better than being like every other one of those editors who don't care about giving in a good video. And this makes me so mad because there's genuinely some editors who complain that nobody wants to work with them, but I look at their work and there's mistakes that have just been clearly left in. You don't want to be one of those guys. Because what happens is being a perfectionist is actually how you make progress. It's by having a standard set for yourself where you refuse to give in a piece of work that you know has mistakes in it because you didn't put in the time to check it. So for those of you who are actually going to put in effort into their videos, you're like me, and I enjoy the fact that you watch my videos and you're learning from this. But I understand, between me and you, we're still gonna make mistakes. We sometimes take longer on the video than we expected it to. Sometimes the animation's harder than we thought it's gonna be, or things go wrong, and that's okay. But how you deal with it will actually change the entire trajectory of your career. And to illustrate this point, I want to tell you a quick story. About 3 to 4 weeks ago, me and my dad were building an office basically at the back of the house. Now, we had built up this entire building, but there was a huge problem, and that was there was no Wi-Fi. We already have Wi-Fi in the house, but to try put it to there, the connection was just super inconsistent. And even if you try to call the ISP, which we did, we called the internet service provider and we said, hey, how can we get Wi-Fi there? All of them said, you're not going to be able to bring a Wi-Fi there. Let's just call someone else. Let's see someone who can actually directly install Wi-Fi into that room. So my dad called a different internet service provider and they said the same thing. We're not going to be able to bring over a cable. It's literally impossible. You can maybe use a Wi-Fi repeater and you could get it to work. Now at this point, I'm genuinely thinking of waving my white flag and saying, okay, fair enough, we'll just use a Wi-Fi extender, I'll firm it. But something inside of me knew I was going to regret it. I just imagine myself in a year, 2 years from now, where I'm getting pissed at myself because the 5th download for the day just got cancelled because the Wi-Fi went out for half a second. And it's at this point that a quote from Alex Hormozi, an entrepreneur making like $250 million a year, he has this quote which I heard from some of his content, which is, did you try or did you move mountains? And when I'm in that moment, I'm going to tell myself, oh, I tried my best. But the truth is, deep down, I know I could have done more. So I told my dad, like, you know what? Let's call another internet service provider. Now, this one we call, they don't say no instantly, but they don't give us a clear yes. What they said is we'll have an engineer come through, they'll survey it, and then they'll give you the heads up if you can do it. Now, the engineer comes from this company, and they basically survey the house saying, hey, can we put a cable all the way there? Now, the problem is the cable's all the way at the front of the house that they need to pull it from that internet box, and they need to pull it all the way through the house, through the garden, and then into the office at the back. The problem with that is we're going to have to drill a ton of holes through the house, and you can imagine on like a white room like this, you probably don't want some thick black cable going through the entire thing. So me and my dad have the conversation, and we're like, you know what? Can we just bring it over the house? We ask him if he can do that. And he said, unfortunately, you're not allowed to do that. But right before he leaves, I ask him, what's the reason we're not allowed to do that? And he breaks it down. He says, put simply, we don't have insurance to go over your building. So me and my dad look at each other and he's sort of annoyed, sort of like that, oh, I told you so, we can't do it, sort of face. But I'm actually smiling. So I ask the engineer, I ask, if we did it ourselves and you just had to plug it in the Wi-Fi router in the office, would that be possible? He said, legally, I can't say that you're allowed to or you can't do it, but if everything was safe and the cable was already there, I don't see why we couldn't do it. So what me and my dad spent the next 3 days doing is basically taking this thick black cable from the front of the house, throwing it over when I'm like leaning outside of the window, he throws it to the first floor, then my dad jumps onto the other side of the house and like pulls it through. Like it's a whole mission in order to get that cable there. And when the engineer came the next time, they approved it, and now I have gigabit Ethernet Wi-Fi. Now the whole point of this story is to say I could have easily said, oh, my hands are up, I guess I can't get decent Wi-Fi, the circumstances didn't allow for it. But instead, I moved mountains to make it happen. And you should apply the exact same mindset to your editing when things go wrong. What this looks like is making the video as good as possible, even when you feel like you can get away with giving in something mediocre. It's meaning that you sometimes stay up late at night because a deadline is due and you procrastinated earlier in the week. Because no matter your circumstances, no matter how rich or poor you start, at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to have to handle the results. And if you're not happy with the results you're seeing in your career right now, well, it's because you didn't move mountains earlier in your career. Even when you have a disadvantage, it's not really about what advantage or disadvantage you have, it's just what did you do with the resources at hand. Because it's when you put everything we talked about in this video together that you get so many editing clients that other people look at you and they think, you're damn cheating. So now you have all of that knowledge. how do you know what niche you're supposed to edit in? Well, I've got this video here where I break down the 8 editing niches on YouTube that I've personally worked in and found are the most profitable. So you can watch that here and find out which niche is right for you.